A U.S. brokered ceasefire between Turkey and Kurdish fighters set to expire just a few hours from now. This as the Turkish president looks for support from Vladimir Putin to carve out a buffer zone in northern Syria. John Hanna is former National Security Advisor to Vice President Cheney, now a senior counselor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good morning to you, John, and thank you for being here this morning. So this ceasefire has entered into its final hours here. Erdogan and Putin are meeting. These are last-minute talks. They're ongoing, we're told, in Sochi. Who has the leverage when it comes to these discussions right now, and what role is Russia going to play in all of this?
Well, Putin clearly is in the driver's seat now. I think the fact that Erdogan had to get on a plane and fly to Sochi in order to consult with Putin and get his approval for whatever buffer zone Turkey's trying to create on that border with Syria, I think is an indicator that Putin, with his forces on the ground, his commitment for the long haul in Syria, he's going to be critical to whatever Erdogan wants to try and achieve in Syria in terms of carving out this buffer zone and returning some of the 3.5 million Syrian refugees that are sitting inside of Turkey now and putting a lot of pressure on Erdogan's government. When
you look at the warning coming from Erdogan, and this was today, that his military will resume this offensive if all the Syrian Kurds don't leave the border region before this ceasefire deadline runs out. That is 10 o'clock local time, 3 o'clock Eastern time here. So we're just a few hours out now. What did Erdogan mean with that warning, and how far does he go with it?
Well, it's hard to know. Erdogan has been full of bluster and been threatening the Syrian Kurds for years. Sometimes he's been successfully deterred either by American threats and warnings or by Russian threats and warnings. I'm sure that Putin wants to try and accommodate Erdogan as best he can. He doesn't want to see a real blow-up in Syria that further destabilizes the Syrian government, that he really wants to get a handle on things now. He'd like to see the Assad government reassert its control throughout Syria. He doesn't want us to now suddenly have a new phase of the Syrian civil war in which you've got massive slaughter against the Kurds. So Russia's going to be playing a critical mediating function here, and I think will be very influential in trying to limit the amount of violence that takes place.
So those talks ongoing, and the clock is certainly ticking. We'll be watching all that. Meanwhile, there seems to be a contradiction to what happens with those U.S. troops that are leaving Syria, and they're supposed to go to western Iraq, over the border into western Iraq. Mark Esper, the U.S. Defense Secretary, said that under the current plan, all U.S. troops leaving Syria will go to western Iraq, and the military would continue to conduct operations against ISIS from there. There's only one problem. Iraq says that they don't have permission to be there or stay there. And this is the statement coming from the Iraqi military. All U.S. forces that withdrew from Syria received approval to enter the Kurdish region so that they may be transported outside Iraq. There is no permission granted for those forces to stay inside Iraq. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, no, well, this is the problem, Sandra, when you try to make policy literally overnight by kind of a presidential spasm or impulse rather than a deliberate planning process that actually involves analysis and consultations with allies. The Iraqis have literally woken up one day to find that there might be another 1,000 American troops in their country without them really being consulted and them having a chance to bring their own public along in this process. So it's an embarrassment for the Iraqis. I still think there's a chance we'll be able to work something out if we give this process a little bit of time. But it underscores the need for allies and the need for us to really be sensitive to our partners who face their own real political vulnerabilities and difficulties by various moves that the United States makes.
And Mark Esper, for his account, in that contradiction, he says he has spoken to his Iraqi counterpart about the plan to shift those more than 700 troops leaving Syria into western Iraq. That is something we will be watching in the hours to come. John Hanna, appreciate it. Thank you.